So longer lasers, and particularly the longer B1, have been favorites of mine for a long time. I've done a couple of videos on the longer B1, and you might think it's at the end of its evolutionary path, but I've got news for you. They now have this. This is the longer Ruby. It's a 2-watt drop-in laser module for IR, and it will add a completely new set of capabilities to your longer B1. Now, if you own one of these lasers and you're looking for some more capability, then you're going to want to watch this video, so let's get started. Longer has a long history of allowing you to move forward in technology as it becomes available without having to buy a new laser every couple of years. And they did this with Array 5, starting initially with 5 watt, and now you can upgrade that all the way to 20 watts. And then when the B1 came out, they started with 20 watts, and you can upgrade that all the way to 40 watts. Now, that in itself is pretty amazing, but they've added one more set of checkboxes to the feature list, and that's the addition of the IR laser module with this longer Ruby. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here on the longer B1 itself. I've covered that in a couple of previous videos, and if you're interested, you can click up in the corner here and go watch one of those. Instead, what I'm going to do is focus on the additional capabilities that the longer Ruby laser module gives you. This laser module is not for cutting, so don't assume that you can cut anything with it. It's very specifically for engraving, and for the most part metal, although you can do some other materials, and we'll look at those as well. Now, first thing we need to do is get this laser module installed, and to do that we have to remove the existing module. So pull the air assist hose off, disconnect the connector, loosen the thumb screw, and pull the laser module off and put it aside. Now, we're not throwing that one away. We're going to need it again for diode laser work, but we'll put the IR laser module on, and it just mounts the same way. So put it on, tighten the thumb screw. Now, there is a little focusing arm that you can drop down to help you get this thing installed. And once it's there, you plug the power connector in. Now, there is no air assist on this module, but you don't actually need it. However, there is a red dot sight, so you know exactly where things are going to engrave. And that's really important because you're going to use that a lot for fine detail when you're engraving with this laser module. So over in Lightburn here now, and I just picked the longer B1 laser. I don't have to create a new setting of any sort. But I do have to appreciate that I'm using the IR laser module, and that's because the settings are going to be quite different. But I'm looking at the workspace here, and you can see down here there's this really small word, and if I zoom into it, you can see it's the word Paris, and I can select it. Now note the height here. The height of this text is 3.75 millimeters, which is minuscule, and that's probably smaller than most diode lasers can engrave. And that's because the laser spot size here is 0.03 millimeters square. Now that means that I get a whole lot more line density. So if I look at my settings, I mentioned they'd be different. I'm using 100 millimeters a minute for speed, which is pretty slow, and max power at 95%, and that's because I'm going to put this into a piece of stainless steel. It's a small necklace, and what I'm trying to show you here is the level of detail you can get. The lines per inch here is currently set at 254. That's a fraction of what this laser is capable of. This laser at 0.03 millimeters square is capable of close to 800 lines per inch. So this isn't a lot, but at 3.5 millimeters, it doesn't really have to be high detail anyway, because most people's eyes couldn't resolve any kind of jaggy edges on the text. So I'm just going to leave it like this. I'll shoot it over to the laser, and I'll show you a bit of that working, and then we'll take a look at the output. Here's the laser hard at work. You can see I'm in the final seconds of this project. Now notice along the bottom of the word, it's perfectly aligned to the edge, and that's because I used the red dot to frame. Now here's the output from that job, and you can see just how crisp that word is. And if you really want to see the size here and compare it to something, here's a standard pencil. Now I did a few other metals here just to kind of show you some of the capabilities. Now most of these you can't touch with a diode laser, but the first one here, I just took a piece of plate stainless and engraved my logo up 4 times from the bottom up, and mostly to lock in settings, but I was also deciding what I wanted to fill there. And you can see the detail. By the time I got to the 4th one at the top, the settings were pretty much locked in, and this came out great. Next, I did just an aluminum ingot, and I put just my sliced pie logo in there. And if I tilted forward to get it into the right light, you can actually see the pie slice is drawn in there. And the reason it's hard to see is because it's really, really thin. Then I took a piece of brass. Now this one will be a little harder to see. And if I get it into the right light, you can see I engraved my standard dog picture in there, and the detail again came out fantastic. Now this picture is about 20 millimeters wide, so it's really small. I just wanted to kind of see how well it worked on brass. This is a single pass. Again, we're close to about 70% power, and we're going quite a bit faster than we would for stainless. Now, finally, I did a business card on the metal side, and I started with a grayscale, and you can see it's pretty contrasty here. So this laser is really not that great for grayscale, but I flipped the card over and I did dithering, and this came out just spectacular. The detail here is so incredible. You can make out the grain of the fur in his collar, and you can certainly separate his jacket from the dark floor behind him. So all in all, fantastic output on the metal side. Now I wanted to do a non-metal material, so I chose black acrylic, and I'll just grab the longer logo and I'll use that. Now this one looks kind of funny because I've already adjusted it. It'll look more like the one on the right because I've set the contrast very high and the brightness relatively low, I would say, and just to kind of darken up the image. I really don't want it to be too grayscale-ish because acrylic just isn't a material that grayscale works on very well. So that's the setting, and I'll just fire this over to the laser. I found a scrap piece of acrylic, and I'll see what it looks like. So I'll just speed through the job here, and you can see it going. It's about 12 times speed, normal speed. Now I will call out that sometimes the reflection off the black acrylic will set off the fire detector. Now you can turn that off in Lightburn by going to the console and doing $1.45 equals 0, and I'll put the text down below here, and that will disable it. Otherwise you'll get an alarm. Now you can see the results are predictably great, and there you go. There's some acrylic, and it looks wonderful. Now you can see the output here is spectacular. That 0.03 millimeter spot size just gives you such a level of detail on metals and some other materials that you just can't possibly get with a diode laser on any material. So keep that in mind. Now it may be something, if you're looking to expand into maybe metal engraving, you might want to consider one of these for your longer B1. The beauty is you don't have to buy another IR laser. You can get a lot of this capability of, say, what an X-Tool F1 has without changing lasers. And you can swap this laser module in very quickly, a couple minutes, and you're ready to go on some of these materials. Now, I'll put a link in the description down below if you are interested in picking one of these up. I'd appreciate if you use that link. And we'll wind down there, so get out there, make your world, and I'll see you next time.